My daughter-in-law told me the celebration dinner was cancelled. "It's been postponed, Mum," she said. "No need for you to come." I believed her, but as I drove past the restaurant, I saw them, her and my son, toasting with their friends, using my credit card. Right then, I pulled out my phone, cancelled the card, and watched the smile vanish from her face in seconds. There are moments in life that tear you in two, moments where the ground disappears beneath your feet, and everything you thought you knew turns to ash. That October night, walking through the streets of Manhattan with my grocery bag in my hand, I lived that moment. My name is Eleanor. I am 67 years old, with wrinkles I count as medals and a heart I thought was unbreakable. For 42 years, I was married to Albert, a good man who left me a widow 5 years ago. Since then, my world had narrowed down to three things: my two-story house in Queens, my bougainvillea plants that I tend to every morning, and my son, Matthew. My only son, my reason for carrying on after Albert was gone. But that night, as the crisp October air hit my face and the city lights blinked indifferently, I discovered that a mother's love can turn into her worst blind spot. It all started with a phone call 3 hours earlier. I was preparing my famous turkey chili, the one Matthew had loved since he was a kid, when my cell phone rang. It was Valerie, my daughter-in-law. "Mum, how are you?" Her voice sounded rushed, almost irritated. "Look, I'm calling to let you know that tonight's dinner has been postponed. Matthew had an issue at work, so we're putting off the celebration for another day." I felt a stab of disappointment. We had planned that dinner for 2 weeks to celebrate Matthew's promotion at the architecture firm. I had bought the freshest ingredients. I had taken out the china set that I only use for special occasions. I had even gone to Mrs. Peterson's bakery for those cinnamon rolls that Valerie likes. "Is Matthew okay?" I asked, worried. "Do you need anything?" No, everything's fine. It's just, work. Don't bother coming. You rest instead." And she hung up. Something in her tone bothered me. It wasn't concern I heard. It was rush, as if I were a chore she needed to dispatch quickly. I stood staring at the steaming pot, the chili bubbling with that aroma of chocolate, spice, and cinnamon that filled the kitchen. I felt a heaviness in my chest. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe I was being a paranoid old woman, as Valerie had once called me, unintentionally during an argument. But I couldn't settle down. I decided to go for a walk. I needed air to clear that strange feeling that was squeezing my stomach. I put on my beige sweater, the one Albert gave me that smells like lavender because I store it with sachets, and I headed towards the market. Maybe buying some flowers would cheer me up. The sunset painted the sky orange and violet. The streets were alive. Street vendors, the smell of hot dogs and pretzels, music pouring out of the shops. I walked aimlessly, letting my feet lead me. And then I saw it. The restaurant, the terrace room. That elegant place with huge windows and warm lights that Matthew always said was too expensive for a casual dinner. I passed by it by chance, by that cruel chance that destiny sometimes gives you when you need an awakening. And there they were. Matthew, my son, sitting at a large table right by the window, laughing, a glass of red wine in his hand, toasting. Next to him, Valerie, in that tight black dress I had never seen her wear, her hair pulled back in a sophisticated bun, looking like the queen of the night. But they weren't alone. There were 8 other people at that table, their friends. I recognized some of them. Susan and her husband, that couple who always make pretentious comments. Richard, Matthew's friend who sells insurance, 2 girls I didn't know, made up like models. And everyone was laughing. Everyone was toasting. Everyone was eating from those huge plates, the kind they only serve in restaurants where one meal costs more than a week's worth of groceries. I stood frozen on the sidewalk. People passed by, bumping me unintentionally, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. There were wine bottles, 3, 4, I lost count, jumbo shrimp, cuts of steak, flaming desserts, and in the center of the table, a silver bucket with champagne. Valerie raised her glass, said something that made everyone laugh, and Matthew kissed her on the cheek. It was as if someone had stabbed a knife into my chest and slowly twisted it. "It's been postponed, Mum. No need for you to come." Valerie's words echoed in my head like a mocking retort. Nothing had been postponed. They had just excluded me. They lied to me. They pushed me aside like an old piece of furniture that no longer matches the decor. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I remembered something that chilled my blood. That morning, Valerie had asked to borrow my credit card. "Mum, I need to buy a gift for Matthew, something special for his promotion. Could I borrow your card?" "I'll give it back to you tomorrow. No fail." I, as always, gave it to her without hesitation. And there they were, spending my money, celebrating without me. Laughing, probably, at how easy it was to fool the silly old woman who gave everything without asking. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't sadness. It was fury. A cold, silent fury that rose from the pit of my stomach and filled me completely. I pulled out my cell phone with trembling hands. I logged into the bank app. And there, in real time, I could see the charge they had just made. The Terrace Room Restaurant. 47,300 pesos. 47,300 pesos. In a single night. On a lie. I didn't think twice. My fingers moved on their own. I went to the security section, and I cancelled the card. Immediate cancellation. All pending transactions blocked. I looked up at the window just in time to see the exact moment. A waiter approached the table. He said something to Valerie. She frowned. She took out her cell phone. Her face, which seconds before was beaming with happiness, transformed. First confusion, then panic, then rage. I saw her show the screen to Matthew. I saw him pull out his phone too. I saw them both start typing frantically. And then, as if she could feel my gaze, Valerie looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. She saw me standing on the sidewalk, in my old sweater and my grocery bag, staring fixedly at her, and on her face, I saw something I will never forget. It wasn't shame. It was contempt. She looked at me the way one looks at an annoying insect that ruined the party. Matthew saw me too. He turned pale. He said something. Valerie stopped him. She put her hand over his. She shook her head. I didn't move. I didn't go inside. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I just looked at them. I looked at them until Valerie looked away, uncomfortable. Until Matthew lowered his head. Then, with what dignity I had left, I turned around and walked back home. My legs were trembling. The city lights blurred through the tears I refused to let fall. The street noise became a distant buzz. When I arrived at my house, I locked the door, turned off the lights, and sat down on the living room sofa. That sofa where Albert and I watched Matthew grow up, where we celebrated his first steps, his birthdays, his achievements. And for the first time in 5 years since Albert died, I felt completely alone. But in the midst of that loneliness, in the middle of that pain crushing my chest, something began to awaken. A question. A terrible doubt that I hadn't dared to ask before. How many times had this happened? How many more lies had I swallowed without realizing it? I didn't sleep that night. And when the sun rose the next day, I was no longer the same woman. because there are deceptions that hurt, and there are deceptions that transform you. And if you want to know how far my own family's betrayal went, and how one silly old woman taught them a lesson they will never forget, subscribe to this channel, because this story is just beginning, and what I discovered next was much worse than I imagined. In the early morning, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, I started to remember. And every memory was like opening an old wound that had never properly healed. I met Valerie 4 years ago. Matthew came home one Sunday with her on his arm, smiling that way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "Mum, this is Valerie. She's special." I wanted to believe him. I wanted my son to be happy after being alone for so long. Valerie was pretty, I won't deny it. Tall, thin, with that kind of self-assurance that commands attention. She came from Texas. She worked in marketing. She spoke with sophisticated words that I sometimes didn't understand. There were signs from the beginning, small, so subtle that I ignored them, thinking it was my imagination. The first time I cooked for her, I made my famous creamy clam chowder, the one everyone in the family loves. She barely tasted it. "Oh, I don't eat many carbs, Mum, but it looks interesting." She said it with a little smile that didn't reach her eyes. Matthew laughed nervously and changed the subject. When I showed her pictures of Matthew as a child, she yawned. "Oh, Mum, all babies look the same, don't they?" When I told her about Albert, about how we met at a fair in Ohio more than 40 years ago, she checked her phone while I was talking. "How nice, Mum. So romantic," without looking up from the screen. But I kept quiet, because Matthew looked at her as if she were the son, and I didn't want to be the bitter mother-in-law who ruins her son's happiness. Then came the wedding. Valerie wanted a wedding straight out of a magazine. Huge garden, imported dress, banquet for 200 people. "It's my day, Mum. A woman only gets married once." She looked at me with those eyes I was beginning to know, those that said, "You have the money, I have the youth. Do your part." Matthew was working as a junior architect. He made good money, but not that much. Valerie had just quit her job due to stress. Then they turned to me. "Mum, I know it's a lot to ask." Matthew had that little boy face that always melted me. "But Dad always said that when I got married he would pay for my wedding." "I know he's not here anymore, but—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I spent $180,000 on that wedding. The savings that Albert and I put together from selling the hardware store. Money I was saving for emergencies, for my old age, so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. Valerie chose everything. I just signed the checks. On the wedding day, she didn't even thank me. She just said, "Oh, Mum, it's great that you could help us. Matthew deserved no less." Afterward came the wedding gift. They were renting a small apartment. Valerie constantly complained. "We can't live like this, Matthew. I come from a good family. I'm used to something else." One day they came to my house. Valerie with a serious face, Matthew nervous. "Mum, we found a perfect condo in Brooklyn Heights. 3 bedrooms, balcony, parking. But we need the down payment." Matthew wouldn't look me in the eye. "It's an investment. Someday it will be for our kids. For your grandchild, Mum." $850,000, almost all the inheritance Albert left me. I did it. Of course I did. Because that's what mothers do, right? Sacrifice. Give everything. Even if it hurts. Valerie hugged me that day. The only hug she gave me in 4 years. "Thank you, sweet Mum. You don't know what this means to us." But things didn't get better. They got worse. Matthew started visiting me less. He used to come every Sunday for dinner, then every 2 weeks, then once a month. Always with excuses. Valerie has yoga, Mum. We have plans with her friends and you know how bad the traffic is. The calls changed too. We used to talk about everything. Now the conversations lasted 3 minutes. How are you, Mum? Fine, son. That's good. I'll call you later. I'm in a hurry. And then the emergencies began. Mum, our washer broke. Can you lend us money to fix it? $15,000. Mum, Valerie needs urgent dental work. $20,000. Mum, the car needs new tires and we can't afford it. $12,000. It always ended up on my credit card, the one I lent them for emergencies and which they never gave back. 6 months ago, Valerie used my card to buy clothes. I saw her tagging herself on Instagram with bags from Macy's and Saks Fifth Avenue. When I asked her, she laughed. Oh, Mom, it was a sale. Don't tell me you're going to get mad over a few rags. $15,000 worth of clothes she called a few rags. I kept quiet. I always kept quiet. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I complained, Matthew would pull away even more. Afraid of being completely alone. Afraid of being the bitter old woman no one wants around. Albert always told me, Eleanor, you're too good. People take advantage of that. I would answer, he's our son, Albert. A son would never betray you. But Albert was gone. And I was beginning to understand that I had been wrong. That morning, as the cold coffee turned bitter in my mouth, I realized something terrible. I hadn't been generous. I had been cowardly. I gave them money because it was easier than demanding respect. I accepted crumbs of attention because I was terrified of ending up with nothing. And Valerie knew it from the start. She smelled my weakness the way sharks smell blood. The sun was starting to rise when I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg for affection. I was going to discover the truth, the whole truth, because if they had lied to me about a dinner, what else had they lied about? I went to my room, took out the folder from my nightstand where I kept the bank statements, the ones I never checked because I trusted my son. I spread them out on the kitchen table, and I started to read. What I found took my breath away. But that is something that still hurts to tell. And when you know, you'll understand why what I did next wasn't revenge. It was survival. I couldn't stay home. Not after seeing them through that window, celebrating with my money while I was the nuisance who had to be hidden. I put on my grey coat, the one I wear for church, tied my hair in a low ponytail, and went out into the street again. It was almost 9 o'clock at night. The streets were still full of life, but I walked like a zombie, with only one destination in mind: the Terrace Room restaurant. Every step I took toward it was a struggle between my dignity and my pain. One part of me was screaming, "Go home, Eleanor. Don't humiliate yourself anymore." But another part, the one that had woken up when I cancelled the card, pushed me forward. Go, look them in the face. Let them know that you are no longer the fool who keeps quiet. When I arrived, I stood in front of the entrance. The doorman gave me a strange look. I didn't fit in there. With my simple clothes, my old grocery bag, my comfortable elderly woman's shoes. But I went in anyway. The place smelled of money, scented candles, fresh flowers, that expensive perfume restaurants use to make people feel like they're somewhere special. The tables were full of elegant people, quiet conversations, clinking glasses. And in the back, next to that huge window with a view of the illuminated city, was Matthew and Valerie's table. I walked toward them. My legs were shaking, but I didn't stop. Valerie saw me first. Her queen of the party face froze. She urgently touched Matthew's arm. He turned, and when he saw me walking toward them, he turned white as a sheet. The friends at the table stopped laughing. Everyone was staring at me, an old woman interrupting their perfect celebration. Good evening, I said when I reached the table. My voice came out firmer than I expected. Excuse me for interrupting. Matthew stood up clumsily. Mum, You don't need to be here, he stammered. I looked him straight in the eyes. The dinner was postponed, they told me. Valerie let out a nervous laugh. Oh, Mum, what a surprise to see you here. She smoothed her hair, regaining that mask of superiority. You see, the plans changed, and we thought it would be better not to bother you. You know, at your age, it's tiring to go out at night. At my age, I repeated slowly. Of course. I looked at the table. The empty wine bottles, the half-eaten plates, the champagne bucket, the lobsters, the expensive desserts. 10 people in total. Some had already left. And this is part of not bothering me, I asked. Spending my money on a party where I'm not invited? One of the friends, Richard, coughed uncomfortably. The two girls I didn't know lowered their gaze. Susan, the pretentious one, exchanged glances with her husband. Matthew tried to take my arm. Mum, it's not what you think. Let me explain outside. I pulled away from his grip. No, explain it here, in front of all your friends, who are toasting with the money you borrowed from me for a special gift. Valerie stood up. Her face was no longer kind. Mum, you're making an unnecessary drama. Why don't you just go home and we'll talk calmly tomorrow? Drama? The word burned me. I'm making drama. Tell me, Valerie, how much did this dinner cost? She clenched her jaw. That's not your problem. Yes, it is, because you paid for it with my credit card. I took out my cell phone. I looked up the statement. $47,300 in a single night. The silence at the table was absolute. Even the conversations at nearby tables stopped. Mum, please, Matthew whispered. You're embarrassing us. That sentence, that damned sentence, was like a slap in the face. I'm embarrassing you. My voice broke. Me? The one who paid for your wedding? The one who bought you your condo? The one who pulls out her card without asking every time you have an emergency? Valerie crossed her arms. No one forced you to do any of that. You offered it. You always offer everything because you need to be needed. I felt as if a dagger had been twisted in my chest. But she wasn't finished. The truth is, Mum, it's exhausting. Always playing the victim. Always reminding us how much you've given us. You know what? If spending on us bothers you so much, then don't do it. Tears started to burn my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not in front of her. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. I looked at Matthew, my son, the child I raised alone after Albert died, the one who swore he would always take care of me. Do you think that too? I asked him. He didn't answer. He just looked at the floor. And there I had my answer. I searched my purse, took out the credit card I had mistakenly carried with me, the one that still worked. I placed it on the table, next to the remnants of the expensive food. Settle the bill with this, I said. It's the last thing you will ever use from me. Valerie picked up the card with a triumphant smile. Whatever you say, Mum. I turned to leave, but before walking out of that place, I turned back one last time. Enjoy your dinner, I said, because it cost you a lot more than you imagine. I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, even though I was crumbling inside. In the taxi back home, the tears finally fell. I cried silently as the city passed in a blur through the window. But amidst those tears, something was growing. A determination, a cold rage, a certainty. If this is how they treated me when I gave them everything, Then it was time to find out what happened when I gave them nothing. And what I found when I got home and reviewed those bank statements, believe me, was only the beginning of a nightmare that I myself had been financing unknowingly. I arrived home after midnight. I locked the door. I turned on all the living room lights and sat down at the dining table with a determination I had never felt before. I put my old laptop on the table, the one Matthew had taught me to use years ago. I logged into the bank portal with trembling hands, not from fear, from rage. The screen loaded slowly. Username, password. And there it was, my bank account, the one I had shared out of trust with my son 2 years ago, when he told me he could help me if I had any emergencies. "So you're not alone in this, Mum. I'll take care of you." What a bitter irony. I started checking the transactions for the last 6 months, at first, calmly, then with my heart beating faster and faster. January, charge, department store, $18,500, charge, luxury spa. $12,800, charge, premium wine shop. $9,300. February, charge, Milan boutique, $24,600, charge, the French Laundry restaurant, $15,700, March. And this is where my blood ran cold. Charge, Sunset Tours travel agency, $87,400, $87,000. I opened the details. All-inclusive package to Miami Beach. 5 days, 4 nights, suite room with ocean view. I got up from the chair. I walked in circles around the living room. I took a deep breath. They never told me they were going on a trip. They never invited me. They didn't even tell me. I went back to the computer. I kept checking like someone peeling an onion, knowing that each layer would make her cry more. April, charge, Tiffany & Company jewelry, $43,200. Charge, beauty salon, $8,900. Charge, sports club, annual membership, $31,000. May, charge, contemporary furniture store, $52,600. Charge, Samsung Electronics, $38,400. June, charge, 11 Madison Park Restaurant, $22,100. Charge, Broadway tour, $11,800. Charge, designer store, $29,300. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. I took out my old notebook, the one where Albert wrote down the hardware store accounts, and I started to add. January, $58,700. February, $63,200. March, $104,800. April, $98,300. May, $103,700. June, $81,400. I continued with July, August, September. Every month was the same, expenses and expenses. Expensive things, luxuries, whims. When I finished adding, the number took my breath away. $340,000 in 6 months. My son and my daughter-in-law had spent $340,000 of my money, without asking, without telling me, without a single explanation. Money that I had earned working 30 years in the hardware store with Albert. Money that cost us late nights, exhaustion, sacrifices. Money that I was saving so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone in my old age. And they spent it like confetti. I poured myself a glass of water with trembling hands. But I wasn't finished. I remembered something. My tablet, the one I bought last year and left charging in the living room. Matthew sometimes used it when he visited because he said his phone ran out of battery. I went to get it. I turned it on. And I found something that broke me in a way I hadn't expected. The accounts were synchronized, their WhatsApp, their messages. Everything. I didn't want to look. Part of me screamed to stop searching that I had suffered enough. But another part, the new Eleanor who was being born that night, knew I needed to see to the bottom of the pit. I opened the chats. The first group was called The Girls. It was a group for Valerie and her friends. I went in and read. Valerie. Girls, look at the necklace I bought. Tiffany. Obvi. The old lady won't even find out. Ha ha ha. Susan. Girl, oh, you're my idol. I couldn't ask my mother-in-law for that much dough. Valerie. It's not asking, it's taking what I deserve. That old woman has money saved and doesn't even use it. What does she want it for? For the funeral? Better that someone who appreciates nice things enjoys it. Carla. Ha ha ha, no way, Val, you're mean. Valerie. Honestly, I'm sick of her. Always with her martyr face, always wanting us to thank her for everything. She's a walking bank and doesn't even realize it. Every word was a stab. But I kept reading, Valerie. The good thing is that Matthew is already on my side. I told him that if he doesn't support me against his mum, I'm leaving. And the poor idiot would do anything not to lose me. Susan. You're a strategist, girl. Valerie. I'm not a strategist. I'm smart. And when the old woman dies, that whole house in Queens is going to be ours. I already talked to Matthew. It's in her name, but we are the only heirs. It's just a matter of time. I covered my mouth to keep from screaming. When the old woman dies. That's what they called me. The old woman. As if I didn't have a name. As if I didn't have feelings. As if I were just a nuisance they had to tolerate while they could get money out of me. And Matthew knew it. Matthew was in agreement. I searched further. I found private messages between Valerie and Matthew. Matthew. My mum asked me about the $87,000 for the trip. Valerie. And what did you tell her? Matthew. That it was a bank error. That they were going to correct it. Valerie. Good. As long as she keeps believing everything, we keep living the good life, my love. Matthew. Sometimes I feel bad, Val. Valerie. Oh, don't start. Do you want me to leave? Because if you prefer your mum over me, say it now. Matthew. No. Sorry, you're right. She's already old. We have to live our life. I closed the tablet. I got up. I walked to the bathroom and threw up, not from physical nausea, but from the emotional disgust of realizing that my own son, the son I carried in my womb, the one I cared for when he had the measles, the one I hugged when his dad died, that son saw me as a nuisance, as money on legs. I washed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror, my swollen eyes, my wrinkles, my grey hair, and in that moment, I made a decision. I was no longer going to be the silly old woman. I wasn't going to keep being the walking bank. I was going to teach them a lesson they would never forget. But not with shouting, not with drama, but with intelligence, with strategy. Just as Valerie said, you don't have to be good. You have to be smart. And I was about to show them that this old woman could still bite. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed sitting on the living room sofa, clutching the embroidered cushion my mother gave me 30 years ago, while the hours passed slowly and cruelly. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rang. Insistent. Aggressive. I got up with an aching body. I hadn't changed my clothes. I was still wearing the same wrinkled blouse from the night before. I opened the door. Matthew was there, but he wasn't the Matthew I knew. His jaw was clenched, his eyes hard. He was wearing that expensive shirt I bought him for his birthday, his father's watch on his wrist. "Mum, we need to talk," he said, without greeting me, without asking how I was. I let him in. I closed the door. I waited. He didn't sit down. He stood in the middle of the living room, looking down at me as if I were an employee who had made a mistake. "Why did you do that last night?" His voice was cold. "Why did you go to the restaurant and embarrass us in front of our friends?" I remained silent, processing that these were his first words. Not an apology, not an explanation, a complaint. "Are you serious, Matthew?" My voice came out calmer than I expected. "Are you complaining to me?" "Valerie is destroyed. She cried all night because of the humiliation." He ran his hand through his hair. "You cancelled the card in the middle of dinner. Do you have any idea how bad you made us look?" "How bad I made you look?" I repeated slowly. "Matthew, you lied to me. You told me the dinner was cancelled so I wouldn't go. It was a surprise. We were going to ask you to arrive at the end for dessert." He looked at me as if I were an idiot. "But you arrived earlier and ruined everything." The lie was so blatant it hurt. "Uh-huh. And I suppose spending $47,000 was also part of the surprise." Matthew scoffed, annoyed. "Mum, you are exaggerating. It was a celebration. My promotion was important, and we wanted to celebrate it properly with my money." "Because you gave us the card," he raised his voice. "You always give it to us. You always say yes. And now suddenly you get angry and make us look bad." I went to the kitchen. I took the bank statements I had printed early that morning. I came back and put them in front of him. $340,000, Matthew. That's what you've spent in 6 months. Without asking. Without telling me. He didn't even look at the papers. "They're normal expenses, Mum. Clothes, food, going out. Things we need." $87,000 on a trip to Miami Beach you never told me about. "We didn't have to tell you everything we do." His tone became defensive. "We're adults now. $43,000 at a jewelry store?" I pointed to the statement. $52,000 on furniture? $31,000 on a gym? "Valerie deserves to treat herself," he exploded. "Do you know how hard we work? She quit her career to support me. It's the least I can do for her." Something broke inside me. "Matthew, she doesn't work. She quit a year ago because she needs to focus on herself, on her emotional well-being. And who pays for all that while she focuses on herself?" My voice broke. "Who pays her rent? Who pays for her whims? Who pays for everything, Matthew?" "You have the money, Mom," he shouted. "Dad left you the hardware store. You have this huge house all to yourself. Why are you so selfish not to want to share with your own family?" Selfish. He called me selfish. I sat down on the sofa because my legs couldn't hold me up anymore. "I'm the selfish one," I whispered. "Matthew, I paid for your wedding. I bought you your condo. I've given you everything you've asked for, and more. That's being selfish?" "No." He crossed his arms. "But now that I ask you nicely, you shut down and get like this. Dad wouldn't have done this." There it was. The card I knew he would play. "Don't bring your father into this." It's true. He was always generous. He always supported us unconditionally. He looked at me with something that resembled contempt. "You, on the other hand, give with one hand and demand with the other." The tears began to fall. I couldn't stop them anymore. "Your father would have also wanted me to be respected," I said through sobs. "To be valued, not to be lied to. Matthew sighed, as if I were a heavy burden he had to carry. Look, Mum, Valerie is my wife. She is my priority. If I have to choose between making you happy and making her happy, I'm going to choose her. Always. Every word was like a nail in my heart. And what am I to you? I asked with a broken voice. You're my mum, and I love you. But you're old now, Mum. He said it with appalling casualness. You've lived your life. Now let me live mine. Stop controlling everything with your money. I stared at him, this 32-year-old man who was once my baby, who clung to me when he had nightmares, who said, I love you, Mummy, every night before bed. Now he looked at me as if I were an obstacle. Matthew, I just want you to respect me. And I just want you to understand that you are no longer the center of my world. He walked toward the door. Fix the card issue, or Valerie and I are going to have to make some difficult decisions about our relationship with you. He left. He closed the door without saying goodbye. I was left alone in that living room where I watched him grow up, surrounded by photos of happy moments that now seemed like lies. I hugged my mother's cushion and cried like I hadn't cried since I buried Albert. I cried for the son I lost, because the Matthew who just left wasn't my son. He was a stranger who looked like him. I cried for all the years I gave boundless love, for all the times I stayed silent, for having become someone so expendable. But amidst those tears, something changed. The pain turned into clarity. If for Matthew I was just money, then it was time to close the bank. And if Valerie thought I was a silly old woman who would keep funding their luxuries while they planned to take my house when I died, she was very wrong, because this old woman had just woken up. And what came next was going to surprise them in ways their manipulative minds never imagined. I spent 3 days locked in my house, not answering calls, not opening the door, barely eating, crying when my body asked for it, and then drying my tears with rage. On the 4th day, someone knocked on the door insistently. Eleanor, Eleanor, I know you're in there. Open up or I'm breaking the door down. I recognized the voice. Ruth, my lifelong neighbor, 72 years of pure energy and character. I opened up. She swept in like a whirlwind, with a steaming pot in her hands. Girl, you look terrible. She put the pot in the kitchen. When was the last time you ate something decent? Ruth, I don't feel like... I don't care. She gently pushed me toward the table. Sit down. I made you chicken noodle soup. And you're going to tell me what the hell is going on because you haven't been out for days. And I saw Matthew leaving here the other day in a fury. Something in her tone, firm but loving, broke me. And I told her everything, every detail. The restaurant, the messages, the expenses, Matthew's words. Ruth listened in silence, serving the soup, handing me napkins when the tears wouldn't let me talk. When I finished, she sighed deeply. Eleanor, I'm going to tell you something I never tell anyone. She took off her glasses, wiped them with her apron, and put them back on. 12 years ago, I had a house, a beautiful house in Boston that my husband and I bought when we got married. 3 bedrooms, a yard with trees, the kitchen I always dreamed of. She paused. When my Ernest died, my oldest son, John, came to live with me. He brought his wife. They told me it was temporary while they saved up for their own house. She took a sip of water. 2 years passed. They were still there. They didn't pay rent. They didn't pay utilities. I paid for everything. One day, I found hidden documents. John had forged my signature. He had put the house up as collateral for a loan he never told me about. When he couldn't pay, we lost everything. Her voice broke. I lost my house, my savings, everything. I had to come and rent this tiny apartment where I live now. I looked at her with wide eyes. Ruth, you never told me. Because I was ashamed. She wiped a tear. Ashamed of having been so foolish, of having trusted blindly. My own son stole my house, Eleanor. And when I confronted him, he told me the same thing Matthew told you, that I was already old, that I had lived my life, that he needed that money more than I did. She stood up, walked toward me, and took my hands. Don't be like me. Don't let them take everything from you. Because when you lose it, you don't just lose things, you lose your dignity. And that's not easy to get back. Her words struck a chord. But I don't know what to do, Ruth. I don't know how to defend myself. I do. She pulled out her cell phone. My niece, Sue, is a lawyer, specializing in family law. She's seen cases like yours hundreds of times. Let me call her. I didn't think twice. Call her. The next day, Sue arrived at my house. She was about 40 years old. Business suit, intelligent gaze. She carried a briefcase full of documents and a small recorder. Mrs. Eleanor, nice to meet you. She shook my hand firmly. My aunt told me your situation, and I want you to know something. You are not alone, and what they are doing to you has a legal solution. She sat down, took out a notebook. First things first. What is in your name? This house. It's completely paid for. The deed is in my name. Perfect. And the condo you gifted your son? It's also in my name. They just live there. Sue looked up, surprised. You gifted them a condo but never transferred the deed? No. Matthew told me it was better to leave it that way for tax reasons, that we'd fix it later. Sue smiled. A small but significant smile. Mrs. Eleanor, that condo is legally yours. They have no right to it. I felt a tingling in my chest, as if something dormant was waking up. And the money they spent? Sue reviewed the bank statements I showed her. She passed the pages slowly, taking notes. This is misuse of a credit card. Technically, if they didn't have your explicit authorization for each expense, it's a crime. We can file a civil suit to recover the money. Really? My voice trembled with hope. Really? And we have something in our favor. Their messages. She pointed to my tablet. Those conversations where they admit they used your money without your knowledge, where they call you a walking bank, where they plan to inherit your house. All of that is evidence. Ruth applauded. That's my niece. Sue leaned back in the chair. She looked at me seriously. Mrs. Eleanor, I have to ask you something important. What do you want to achieve with this? Do you want to punish them? Do you want to recover your money? Do you want to teach them a lesson? I stopped to think. What did I want? I didn't want to destroy Matthew. He was still my son, despite everything. But I couldn't continue to be his victim either. I want my dignity back, I finally said. I want them to understand that I am not a resource they can exploit. I want Matthew to open his eyes and see Valerie for who she really is. Sue nodded. Then we are going to design a strategy, not to destroy them, to wake them up. Over the next 2 hours, the 3 women sitting in my dining room drew up a plan that would begin with a trap, a test to see how far they were willing to go. Sue explained each step. Ruth contributed ideas. I took notes with hands that no longer trembled. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like control. One more thing, Sue said before leaving. Do you have a will? Yes. Everything goes to Matthew. Yes. We're going to change it. Today. Because if anything happens to you, I need your will to be legally protected. That afternoon, we drafted a new will, one that specified exactly what would happen to my assets, one that Matthew and Valerie would not expect. When Sue and Ruth left, I was alone in my house. But I no longer felt alone. I had allies. I had a plan. I had power. Valerie had said that one should not be good, but smart. Well then, this old woman was about to show them how smart she could be, and the trap I set for them was so perfect that they walked right into it, like mice smelling cheese without seeing the cage. Sue had told me something before she left. Mrs. Eleanor, the best revenge isn't the one you explode with immediately. It's the one you prepare with patience and let them sink themselves. She was right. 5 days passed after our meeting. 5 days in which I didn't look for Matthew. I didn't call him. I didn't text him. I let the silence do its work. He was the one who called first. "Mum, are you okay? You haven't answered my messages." His voice sounded normal, as if he hadn't told me I was old, as if he hadn't chosen me last. "I'm fine, son." I kept my tone calm. "I've just been thinking." "Thinking about what?" "About how you're right. I've lived my life. It's time for you to live yours without me being a burden." Silence on the other end. "Mum, I didn't mean to say—" No, it's okay. Really." I took a deep breath, playing my best role. "In fact, I want to make up for the restaurant. I was too dramatic." "Really?" His voice changed. It became more lively. "Yes. Come to the house tomorrow. Bring Valerie. I want to talk to both of you." I hung up before he could respond. The next day they arrived on time. Valerie was wearing a pale pink dress, her hair down, perfect makeup. Matthew had that relieved smile of someone who believes they won the battle. I sat them down in the living room. I served them coffee. Homemade cookies. "Forgive me for the scene at the restaurant," I began. "Ruth told me I'm going through a bad emotional patch. Age-related things, you know." Valerie exchanged a look with Matthew, a look of triumph. "Don't worry, Mum. We understand." Her voice was sweet, fake. Late-onset menopause can cause those outbursts. I clenched my teeth, but I smiled. "Thank you for understanding me. That's why I made a decision." I took a new credit card from my purse. Gold. Shiny. "This is a new card, with no credit limit." It was a lie. It had a limit of $500. But they didn't know that. Valerie's eyes sparkled like a cat seeing a mouse. "Mum, it wasn't necessary." Matthew tried to sound humble, but greed danced in his eyes. "Yes, it was. I want you to know that I trust you." I handed the card directly to Valerie. "Use it when you need it. It's my way of apologizing." Valerie took the card with those long, red-painted nails. "Oh, sweet Mum. How sweet of you." "Right, my love." Matthew nodded. "Thank you, Mum. This means a lot." I walked them to the door. I watched them drive away in their car. And as soon as they disappeared from sight, I pulled out my cell phone. Sue had installed a special app on my phone, one that would notify me every time they used the card, with amounts, locations, times. "Now we just wait," she had said. "If they've really changed, they'll use the card sparingly. If not, they'll hang themselves." I didn't have to wait long. 2 hours later, a notification. Transaction declined. Versace boutique, $32,700. Insufficient funds. I smiled. Valerie had tried to buy a $32,000 handbag. My phone rang. It was her. Mum, there's a problem with the card. It says insufficient funds. Really? How strange. Let me check it and I'll call you back. I hung up. I didn't call her back. Over the next 3 days, I received 7 more notifications. All declined charges: spa, restaurants, clothing stores. Valerie was desperate to spend. Then came the moment for the next step of the plan. I invited them over again, this time with a different excuse. Kids, I need you to help me sign some papers. I put a thick folder on the table. They're inheritance documents. I want to give you everything while I'm alive to avoid problems when I'm gone. Valerie straightened up in her chair like a dog smelling meat. Inheritance? She asked, feigning surprise. Yes. This house, my savings, everything. I want it to be yours starting now. A lie. They were fake documents Sue had prepared. The real ones were at my lawyer's office. Mum, you don't have to do that. Matthew tried to sound modest. Yes, I do. You're my only family. Valerie was already reading the papers, her eyes scanning every line eagerly. She was looking for the amounts, the values, her reward. The house is valued at $3,200,000, I said casually, plus the savings that are left, plus the condo where you live. The condo too? Valerie looked up. Yes, also. Everything. But I need to ask you a favor in return. Matthew tensed. What favor? I want you to let me live here until I die. I don't want you to put me in a nursing home. This is my house. Valerie let out a little laugh. Oh, Mum, of course. Why would we do that? Because in those messages I read, you told your friends that as soon as I signed, you were going to convince me to sell the house and move to a nursing home to take the money, I thought. But I didn't say it. So should we sign? Valerie already had the pen in her hand. Not today. First, I want to organize a family dinner. We'll all sign it together, with witnesses, the way it should be. The disappointment on Valerie's face was delicious. Witnesses? She asked with a tense voice. Yes, Ruth, her niece, who is a lawyer, some neighbors. I want it to be official and nice. How about Saturday? Matthew looked at Valerie. She nodded, forcing a smile. Perfect, Mum. Saturday. When they left, I called Sue. They fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. Perfect. Now for the good part. Do you have the evidence ready? All of it. Bank statements, screenshots of messages. Recordings of the conversations where they admit they are just waiting for me to die. Excellent. On Saturday, we're going to give them the surprise of their lives. I hung up. I poured myself a chamomile tea. I sat down in my favorite armchair. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. No nightmares, no tears, because I knew that on Saturday the tables would turn, and the ones who thought they had me eating out of their hand were going to discover that this old woman still had claws. And what happened at that family dinner? Believe me, not even in their worst nightmares did they imagine their world would crumble so quickly and so publicly. Saturday arrived with a clear sky. I prepared the house as if it were a celebration. Clean tablecloths, fresh flowers on the table, the smell of the turkey chili that Matthew loved so much filling every corner. But it wasn't a celebration. It was a judgment. They arrived early. Valerie was wearing a tight white dress, as if she were the bride at her own wedding. Matthew was nervous, adjusting his tie every 2 seconds. Mum, it smells delicious, he said, kissing my cheek. Thank you, son. Sit down. The others will be here in a moment. Valerie scanned the room with her eyes, already measuring spaces, imagining how she would decorate it when it was hers. The doorbell rang. Ruth walked in with a platter of lemon meringue pie. Behind her, Sue with her working briefcase. Then, Mr. Peterson and his wife, Rochelle, lifelong neighbours who had known Matthew since he was a child. "So many people," Valerie whispered to Matthew. "They're the witnesses, dear. It's normal," he replied. What they didn't know is that they were also the audience. Everyone sat around the large dining table, 8 people in total. I was at the head of the table as the host. Valerie and Matthew were across from me, like defendants, although they didn't know it yet. "Thank you for coming," I began. My voice came out firm. "I gathered you because I need to discuss something important with my son and daughter-in-law, and I want you to be witnesses." Sue took out her recorder. She placed it in the center of the table. "Is that necessary?" Valerie asked, uncomfortable. "It's legal protocol," Sue replied with a professional voice. "All inheritance proceedings must be documented." Valerie relaxed. Matthew nodded. I placed the stack of bank statements on the table, the folder with the screenshots, the banking documents, everything neatly organized in clear folders. "Before we sign anything, I want us to look at these papers together." Matthew frowned. "What are they?" "They are the statements from my credit card for the last 6 months." The color drained from his face. I opened the first folder. I took out the summary. $340,000. That's what you've spent using my card without my express authorization. My voice didn't tremble. Trips, clothes, restaurants, jewelry, furniture, gyms. Valerie let out a nervous laugh. "Mum, what are you talking about? You gave us the card." "For emergencies, not to fund a lifestyle that you can't even maintain on your own." I took out the screenshots. I spread them on the table like poker cards. "This is a conversation of yours, Valerie, with your friend, sir." I read aloud. "The old lady won't even find out. She's a walking bank. When she dies, the house is going to be ours." The silence was absolute. Mr. Peterson and Rochelle exchanged horrified glances. Ruth pressed her lips together. Valerie turned pale. That's taken out of context." "Out of context," Sue interjected. "Mrs. Valerie, it says here textually, it's just a matter of time until the old lady dies and everything is ours." "I never—" Valerie looked at Matthew for support, but I wasn't finished. I took out another group of screenshots. Conversations between Matthew and Valerie. "Matthew, did you tell Valerie that the $87,000 charge for the trip to Miami Beach was a bank error?" My son couldn't look me in the eyes. "Mum, yes or no?" "Yes." His voice was barely a whisper. "And when I asked you why you visited me less, did you tell Valerie it was because I was an emotional burden?" Tears began to roll down his cheeks. "Mum, it wasn't literal." "And when we argued 2 weeks ago, when you told me I was old and should let you live your life, did you mean it?" Matthew broke. He hid his face in his hands. Valerie, on the other hand, hardened. She wasn't pretending anymore. "You know what, Mum?" "Yes," she said. "Everything. Because it's the truth." She stood up. "You're a manipulative old woman who uses her money to control Matthew. You give and give so that he always feels guilty. So that he always has to come visit you to put up with you." "Valerie, shut up." Matthew tried to stop her. "No, enough is enough." She pointed a finger at me. "You want to know the truth? Matthew doesn't visit you because he doesn't want to. I don't force him. He says himself he's tired of your complaints, of your stories of when your dad was alive, of your house that smells old." Every word was a slap. but I received them standing up. "Are you finished?" I asked calmly. "No. You promised us that house. You promised us the inheritance. And now you want to humiliate us in front of strangers because we took a little of your precious money." Sue cleared her throat. "Mrs. Valerie, technically, they didn't take anything from you because everything still belongs to her." Valerie turned to her. "What?" Sue took some documents from her briefcase. "The condo where you live is in Mrs. Eleanor's name. She never transferred the deed. It is legally her property." Valerie's face went from the red of fury to the white of panic. But Matthew said—" "Matthew had no authority to promise anything," Sue continued. "Furthermore, Mrs. Eleanor modified her will a week ago. You are no longer the sole heirs." Matthew looked up with swollen eyes. "What? How dare you?" Valerie screamed. "That house is ours. We deserve it." "Deserve it?" Ruth's voice cracked like a whip. "For calling her the old woman, for stealing from her, for wishing her dead?" Mr. Peterson shook his head. "Matthew, I held you when you were a baby. I watched you grow up. I never thought you would be capable of treating your mother like this." Matthew was sobbing uncontrollably now. "I'm sorry, Mum. I'm so sorry." But Valerie wasn't going to give up. "You know what? She can keep everything. Her house, her money, her loneliness." She grabbed her purse. "Let's go, Matthew." Matthew didn't move. "Matthew, let's go." "No." My son looked at me. "I'm not leaving. Mum, forgive me." Valerie looked at him with contempt. "Seriously? You're going to choose your mummy over me?" "I'm not choosing anyone," he replied with a trembling voice. "I'm facing what I did, what I let you make me do." "You're a coward." Valerie headed for the door. "When you get tired of being Mommy's little boy, you know where to find me. But I'm not going to beg." And she left. The door closed with a bang that echoed throughout the house. No one spoke for a long minute. Matthew was still crying. I looked at him from my seat. Part of me wanted to hug him. Another part was still too hurt. "Son," I finally said, "there's one more thing you need to know." And what came next was the hardest decision I have ever made in my life. Because it's one thing to discover betrayal, and another to decide what to do with it. Matthew was still sitting in that chair, broken. His shoulders were shaking. The tears didn't stop. But I needed to finish this. For him, for me, for what remained of our relationship. Sue took more documents from the briefcase. She placed them in front of Matthew. "Mr. Matthew, this is a civil suit for misuse of funds. Your mother can legally recover the $340,000 that you and your wife spent without authorization." Matthew looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Mum, no, I don't have that money. I couldn't pay you even if I wanted to." "I know." My voice came out softer than I expected. "That's why we're going to reach an agreement." I took out another document, the deed to the condo. "This condo is in my name. You have lived there for 2 years without paying rent, without paying utilities. I have covered everything." I pushed the paper toward him. "You have 30 days to vacate it." Are you going to kick us out?" His voice broke. "I'm not kicking you out. I'm taking back what is mine." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Eleanor has every right, young man. That property is hers." "But, Mom, where are we going to go?" Matthew wiped his face with his sleeve. "That's no longer my problem, son. You chose Valerie. You chose to lie to me. You chose to use me." I took a deep breath. Now you choose how to resolve the consequences. Sue continued. Furthermore, Mrs. Eleanor is proceeding legally for the defrauded amount, $340,000. It can be done through payments, but there must be a signed legal commitment. Matthew buried his head in his hands. I don't know what to say. You're right about everything. I don't want you to agree with me. I want you to understand what you did. Ruth stood up, went to the kitchen, and came back with a glass of water. She put it in front of Matthew with a maternal but firm gesture. Drink it, and listen closely to what comes next. I took a breath. This was the hardest part. Matthew, when your dad died, you promised me you would take care of me. You told me, Mom. Now I'm the man of the house. You won't lack anything. His sobs intensified. I believed you. I not only believed you, but I put my whole life in your hands. My money, my trust, my heart. And you… My voice broke, but I continued. You let a woman you barely knew turn you into someone I don't recognize. I know, Mum. I know. And I hate myself for it. I don't hate you, Matthew, but I also can't continue to be your lifeline while you drag me down. Sue placed 2 more papers on the table. Option 1. We proceed with the full lawsuit. Recovery of the $340,000, immediate eviction, possibly criminal charges for fraud. She pointed to the other paper. Option 2. You sign a payment agreement. $50,000 initially, which you must secure within the next 30 days, and the rest in installments of $5,000 monthly for 4 years. You vacate the condo, and you enter mandatory therapy. Matthew looked up. Therapy? Yes, because you need to understand how you got to this point, how you let yourself be manipulated. I looked at him intently. And I'm going to therapy too, to learn how to set boundaries, to stop being the mother who gives everything without demanding respect. Rochelle, who had been quiet the whole time, spoke in a soft voice. Eleanor, you are very brave. Many mothers wouldn't have the courage to do what you're doing. It's not courage, it's survival. I wiped away a tear that escaped. Because if I continue like this, I'm going to end up alone, penniless, and without dignity. Matthew took the agreement paper. He read it with trembling hands. And if I sign this? If I accept everything? Can I still be your son? The silence was heavy. You will always be my son, Matthew. That doesn't change. I paused. But our relationship has to change. You can no longer come only when you need something. I can no longer give you money every time you ask for it. We can no longer continue this unhealthy dynamic. And Valerie? That decision is yours. But if you decide to stay with her, you'll have to live with the consequences. I will not fund her lifestyle anymore. I will not be a part of that relationship. Matthew closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. When he opened them, there was something different in them, something like clarity. Mum, Valerie and we're no longer compatible. I think I knew it a long time ago, but I didn't want to see it. He wiped his nose. She only wanted your money, and I was so stupid that I let her use me to get it. So? I'm going to sign the agreement. I'm going to get that $50,000, even if I have to sell my car. I'm going to go to therapy, and I'm going to divorce Valerie. Sue pushed the document toward him. She handed him a pen. Matthew signed. Every letter was shaky, but it was there. A real commitment. And the condo? He asked in a small voice. I'm going to sell it, I said. With that money, I'm going to open a business. something of my own. A bakery with Ruth. I don't want to live only in the past anymore. Ruth smiled. It's going to be called Never Too Late. For the first time that night, Matthew smiled. A small, sad, but genuine smile. Dad would be proud of you, Mum. I was the one who disappointed him. Your dad loved you, and I love you too. That's why I'm doing this. I stood up, walked toward him. Because true love isn't giving everything without limits. It's taking care of yourself so you can take care of others in a healthy way. He hugged me, and this time I hugged him back. But it wasn't the embrace from before. It wasn't the embrace of the mother who forgives everything without consequences. It was the embrace of two broken people who need to heal separately before they can be well together. When everyone left that night, I was alone in my house. But I didn't feel empty. I felt free. Free from being the bank. Free from being the martyr. Free from being invisible. And as I cleared the dishes from the table and filed the signed documents, I knew that something had ended. But I also knew that something new was beginning. And what came next was the proof that it's never too late to take back your life. Never too late to be who you were always meant to be. 6 months after that dinner that changed everything, I woke up to the smell of freshly baked bread filling my house. It was no longer just my house, it was also my business. Ruth and I had converted the ground floor into a bakery. Cream-coloured walls, rustic wooden tables, display cases full of cinnamon rolls, turnovers, cheesecakes, and that carrot cake that became our hit. A hand-painted sign at the entrance read, "Never Too Late, Artisan Baked Goods." The investment came from the sale of the condo. I sold it for $920,000. I used one part to set up the business. I saved another part for my future. And a small portion I donated to a shelter for older women who were victims of familial abuse. Because if I learned anything from all of this, it's that my story wasn't unique. There were thousands of women like me, being used, being silenced, being invisible. The bakery opened its doors on a Tuesday in March. The neighbours came, acquaintances, people from the market. Mr. Peterson and Rochelle were our first official customers. They bought 4 pounds of butter cookies and gave us their blessing. "Eleanor, this is beautiful," Rochelle said with tears in her eyes. "After everything you went through, look where you are now." And she was right. After hell, I had found something like peace. But it wasn't easy getting here. Matthew kept his word. He sold his car, a Honda that he loved, and gave me the initial $50,000. He vacated the condo in 28 days. He moved to a small studio apartment in New Jersey, something he could afford with his salary, and he started therapy. The first weeks, we didn't talk much, just short messages. "Good morning, Mum. How are you?" Superficial conversations from two people who needed distance to heal. But slowly, something started to change. Matthew started going to therapy twice a week. He told me, months later, that his therapist helped him understand how Valerie had used emotional manipulation techniques from the beginning. Emotional blackmail, isolation from his family, financial control, everything disguised as love. "Mum, I thought if I made her happy, she would truly love me," he told me one afternoon while we were having coffee at the bakery. "But she never loved me. She only loved what I could give her." It hurt to see him realize that, but it also relieved me. The divorce was surprisingly fast. Valerie didn't fight. She signed the papers in exchange for keeping the condo furniture and some savings Matthew had. She already had a new target, a businessman from Atlanta whom she had met on social media. "I wish the poor guy luck," Matthew said with a bitter smile. "He's going to need it." I didn't say anything. Valerie no longer mattered to me. She had stopped taking up space in my head. Through the legal agreement, Matthew paid me $500 every month. Sometimes he would arrive with the money and a sweet roll he bought at another bakery. "Just so you see, I support the competition too," he joked. Those moments were good, not forced, not loaded with guilt. Slowly we learned to be mother and son again, but differently, healthier. He stopped asking me for money. I stopped giving it to him without him asking. He started visiting me because he wanted to, not because he felt obligated. I started living my life without waiting for him as my only purpose. One Sunday, 4 months after the dinner, he invited me to lunch at his studio. It was small, modest, but clean and organized. He cooked pasta with tomato sauce. Something simple, but made with effort. "Mum, I know I can't erase what I did," he said while we ate. "And I know we'll probably never be the way we were before. But I want you to know that I admire you. What you did was the bravest thing I've ever seen." I had a lump in my throat. "Son, I don't need you to admire me. I just need you to respect yourself, to understand your worth, and never let anyone turn you into something you are not." He nodded. "I'm working on that." And he was. I could see it in his eyes. He was no longer the lost, manipulated man from before. He was someone rebuilding himself. Today, as I attend the cash register at the bakery and watch Ruth decorate a Boston cream pie, I think about everything that changed. I no longer wait by the phone for Matthew to call. I have my own rhythm, my own plans. On Tuesdays, I go to yoga class with other ladies from the neighborhood. On Thursdays, I go out with Ruth to the movies. On Sundays, if Matthew can, he comes for breakfast. If he can't, that's okay too. My house no longer smells of loneliness. It smells of cinnamon, vanilla, freshly brewed coffee. It's filled with customers' laughter, with the music I play on the speaker, with the conversations I have with Ruth about new recipes. I recovered $280,000 of what they owed me. I forgave the rest. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to release that burden. The will is still modified. Matthew will inherit half of my assets when I die. The other half will go to causes supporting older women. He knows this, and he agrees. "It's fair, Mom," he told me when I told him. "I don't deserve everything, and you deserve to decide." 2 weeks ago, Sue came to visit me. She bought lemon meringue pie for her family. "Mrs. Eleanor, you have no idea how many clients have come to me telling me stories similar to yours," she told me. Mothers being exploited by their own children. And when I ask them why they don't do anything, they say, "He's my son. I can't." "And what do you tell them?" I asked. "I tell them your story, and I say, love is not submission. Respect is not negotiable. And it is never, ever too late to take back your dignity." Those words stayed with me, because it's true. It's never too late. No matter how old you are, no matter how much you've given, no matter how much you've been hurt, you can always, always choose to get up, choose to respect yourself, choose to live. Today, as I close the bakery and go up to my house to prepare a tea, I look at myself in the mirror. I see a woman of 68 years, wrinkles, grey hair, tired hands. But I also see a woman who saved herself, a woman who is no longer invisible, a woman who learned that true wealth is not what you possess, but what you don't allow them to take from you. And I smile, because if I could do it, anyone can. It's never too late to be who you were always meant to be. A full year had passed since that night at the restaurant. 12 months that felt like a lifetime. It was October again, the month everything fell apart and everything was reborn. I was in the bakery kitchen, kneading dough for the cinnamon rolls for the next day, when I heard the chime of the door. "I'm coming," I shouted, wiping my hands on my apron. It was Matthew, but he wasn't alone. He carried a box wrapped in colourful paper and a bouquet of wildflowers, the kind sold at the market, simple but beautiful. "Hi, Mum." He kissed my cheek. "I brought this for you." I opened the box. Inside was a new photo album with a brown leather cover. On the front, engraved in gold letters, "Our Story, Chapter 2. I opened it with trembling hands. The first pages were filled with old photos. Matthew as a baby, his first day of school. Albert, carrying him on his shoulders. Christmases, birthdays, happy moments. Then came new pages, photos of the bakery, of Matthew and me at the grand opening, of him helping me paint the walls, of us sharing a coffee in my living room. Photos documenting this last year of rebuilding, and at the end, a blank page with a handwritten note. "Mum, I can't change the past, but I can honour it by learning from it. Thank you for teaching me that true love also says no. That respect is not optional, and that it is never too late to start over. I love you, your son, Matthew." Tears fell onto the page. "Do you like it?" he asked timidly. "I love it." I hugged him tightly. "Thank you, son." We sat down at one of the bakery tables. I served him coffee and a slice of freshly baked apple pie. "How is therapy going?" I asked. "Good. Very good, actually." He took a sip of coffee. "My therapist says I'm in the final phase. The phase of acceptance and growth." "I'm happy to hear that. And you? How are you?" He looked at me with those eyes that now held more maturity. "Really? Are you happy?" I looked around. The bakery with its cozy walls, the tables where neighbours gathered every afternoon, the never too late sign shining in the window, Ruth in the kitchen humming a song while decorating cupcakes. "Yes," I answered honestly. "I am happy. For the first time in a long time, I am genuinely happy." Matthew smiled. "That's all I want for you." We ate in silence for a moment. A comfortable silence, full of understanding. "Mum, there's something else I want to tell you." He put down his fork. "I met someone." My heart skipped a beat, part protective, part curious. "Oh?" "Her name is Patty. She's a primary school teacher. I met her in my therapy group." He blushed slightly. "She's different from Valerie. Completely different. She's humble. She works. She has her own dreams. She doesn't ask me for anything. In fact, she insists on paying her own way, always." "And what do you feel for her?" "Peace. I feel peace, Mum. Not drama, not manipulation, just tranquility." I smiled. "That sounds beautiful, son." "I don't want you to meet her yet," he said quickly. "Not until I'm sure. I don't want to repeat mistakes. I don't want to bring anyone into your life who hasn't earned that place." Those words filled me with pride. "That sounds perfect. Take your time." He nodded, relieved. The chime rang again. 3 regular customers walked in, the Smith sisters, who came every afternoon for sweet rolls. "Mrs. Eleanor, we're here for our cinnamon rolls," the oldest one called out cheerfully. I got up to serve them. Matthew helped me serve. We worked side by side as a team, something we hadn't done in years. When the ladies left, Matthew stayed to help me clean up. "Mom, will you ever forgive me completely?" he asked while drying some cups. I paused. I thought about the question. "I've already forgiven you, Matthew, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means I no longer carry the weight of resentment, that I chose to let go of the pain so I could live. I looked him straight in the eyes. What you did hurt me deeply, and those scars are still there. But scars are not a weakness. They are evidence that I survived. He nodded, holding back tears. I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I learned. You don't have to prove anything to me. You just have to be a good man. Live with integrity. Treat yourself with respect. And if you ever have children, teach them that family is built with love, but also with boundaries. I will. I promise. When he left that afternoon, I stood at the door watching him walk away. He was no longer the boy who needed my constant protection. He was a man learning to walk on his own, and I was no longer the mother who defined herself solely by him. I was Eleanor, businesswoman, friend, a complete woman by myself. That night, before going to sleep, I wrote in my diary, something I had started doing in therapy. Today marks 1 year since I saved myself. 1 year of choosing me. And even though the path was painful, it was worth every tear. Because I learned that you can love someone without losing yourself in the process. That you can be generous without being foolish. That you can forgive without forgetting. And that it is never, ever too late to bloom. I closed the diary. I turned off the light. And I slept deeply. No nightmares, no guilt, no fear. Just the certainty that I had recovered the most valuable thing I had, my dignity, and that no one could ever take from me. The end. This is my story, the story of how I hit rock bottom and got back up, of how I lost my son to truly recover him, of how the worst moment of my life became the best beginning. If you are going through something similar, if you feel like you are giving everything and receiving nothing, if you feel invisible in your own life, let me tell you something. You are not alone. You have worth. And it is never, ever too late to start over. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. New York? California? Florida? Texas? I would love to know that these words reached you. Give it a thumbs up if you believe we all deserve respect, regardless of age. And subscribe, because here we will continue to share stories of courage, of rebirth, of women who refuse to be invisible. Thank you for joining me on this journey. With love, Eleanor. Because it's never too late to be who you were always meant to be.